So I'm here with Brian Herdman. Brian's going to talk to us a little bit about his process with his writing, and he's going to share with us an anecdote from when he was hitchhiking around Switzerland as well. So, Brian, you're sort of like quite a well-known poet in Plymouth and the literary scene, so you've performed a few times with Wonder Zoo and at Soapbox Culture. So you've got an interesting way of describing your process. Would you like to go through it with us? Like how...
Okay, well, first of all, I don't really regard myself as a poet. That's probably because I'm quite old-fashioned when it comes to poetry. I like 18th and 19th century poetry, by people like Wordsworth and Shelley and stuff. Modern poetry I know nothing about. I mean, I've read some modern poetry, but I know not much about it. I don't really think of myself as a poet in those terms, and I write, and I've always done this. I've always written since I was a child, but I write purely for my own, amusement's the wrong word. It helps me to understand who I am and where I am. That's why I do it. I'm sorry, what else was it you asked me there?
You've talked about when you write your poetry, it's kind of it's like a revelation. You get epiphanies.
I think of it. I mean, this is a fairly recent thing. I mean, when I say recent, in the past maybe 15 years or something. I just find not that this is a new experience for me, but there are certain moments in life when the nature of reality seems to reveal itself, and the world out there, all that stuff out there and all those other people out there, as opposed to in here, suddenly reveals itself in, it can be just a passing moment when you're doing something trivial like washing the dishes or whatever. You suddenly realise that you are here now. And it's a bit like the writer James Joyce called these moments little epiphanies, little revelations. Buddha, in Buddhist thought, they're referred to as satoris. Moments where the world opens up. It's almost like the screen between me and the stuff out there is suddenly shattered or opened up, and you become one with it. And so it's like I try to capture those things. I know Phil Smith, reading a lot of what he does, he's had a great influence on me recently, just through reading about his mythogeography and the idea of walking purposely but without purpose, in a sense. He's setting out to walk, but he's allowing the experience to enter him and to see what it reveals. Phil, I think, is more interested in the stuff out there than I am. I'm more interested in how that stuff out there makes me who I am. So that's what I do. How successful I am at that, I don't know. That's for anyone else to judge.
Yeah, I do like how you talk about your writing as being sort of like an exploration of inner space and outer space. And a lot of your poems do have that juxtaposition of the thoughts that are going through your head whilst you're having an experience.
That's right. Yeah. So, for example, I mean, in a lot of my poetry, I'll introduce some random piece of conversation that I've had, or something I've overheard while walking down the street.
Just these tiny little moments that we sort of experience and can later remember and reflect upon.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I wrote a poem recently, which I'm not sure whether you heard. Perhaps you did, or I think I put it up on Facebook or something like that. Which is basically just not exactly a transcription, but it was basically a telephone conversation I had with my aunt in Canada. She rang me up and we had this conversation, and when we hung up, I thought back on it and I thought, oh, yeah, that kind of, there was something revealing in that conversation, you know. It was just a simple...
Is this one of the videos that you've got on YouTube under client culture?
Possibly, yes, it is. It
Okay,
is actually, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
So if anyone wants to have a look at that video, it's on the Client Culture YouTube page.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had quite a checkered past once you landed yourself in a jail cell in Switzerland.
It's not the only jail cell I've been in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Would you like to briefly run us through that little story and a bit about... you've chosen a song to share. I asked you what was a song that you liked, and you chose John Hartford's song called Gentle on My Mind. And would you like to just talk about how that song links in with your hitchhiking past?
Okay, well, Gentle on My Mind is, to my mind, is one of the greatest songs ever written. And it's a beautiful lyric, and it tells of a sense of departure, leaving things behind, being free to do that, but never totally leaving things behind, and taking the past with you, but not letting it stop you doing what you want to do. And it's beautifully written song, and it's there are many different performances of it. But I've known the song since it came out. The very first time I heard it wasn't by John Hartford, it was by Dean Martin of all people, which is, and I can't say it registered with me when Dean Martin sang it because it was such a different production. Although looking back I can hear it now and it's a pretty good stab at it. But when I heard John Hartford's own version of it, I realised what the song was about, and it's a song I've carried with me for the past 50 years. So I remember particularly, I was a young man, I was 18, 19 years of age and just about to go to university, and I went hitchhiking for the first time. And this song was one of the songs I used to sing, stood by some miserable roadside in the south of France where people were zipping past in their expensive motor cars and laughing at me and occasionally throwing things at me out of the window. You know, and I'd sing this song because it kept me company and made me happy. And anyway, on my way back from this little trip, I found myself in Switzerland. I was heading towards Amsterdam where I had a flight booked to take me back home, and I was in Switzerland around about midnight. There was little traffic and none of it was interested in me, and I was outside this garage which had just closed, and I thought, there's a little shed next to the garage, and I thought, oh, I'll go and sleep in this shed. You know, and it turned out this shed was actually a toilet, but it was big enough to lay out on the floor, and that's what I did for about 5 minutes before I was aroused by hammering on the door and flashlights going, and these guys, they seemed friendly enough, and I thought, oh, fair enough, and they just took me to a house which turned out to be the house of a policeman who was also friendly enough, and he took me to a kind of outhouse next to his house, a sort of like stone building. He opened the door and I walked in. There was a bed there with some straw mattress type thing, and he said, there you go. And I said, oh, thank you very much, and shook his hand, and he locked the door behind me. And I thought, as soon as I heard that key lock, I thought, oh, I'm in jail. The next day he took me to Lucerne police station, and I was flat broke at this time, no money, and literally no money and no access to money. I just had to hitchhike to Amsterdam, catch this plane home. But I was placed in a cell with another guy who was, looking back, quite mentally disturbed. I think he was pacing about the cell with no shoes and socks on, looking pretty freaky. But eventually he came over to me and sort of offered me some money that he'd taken out of a secret pouch in his belt here. And he was saying, take this money. And I said, no, it's okay. And eventually I thought, well, I've been searched, I'm not going to be searched again. I've got no money, this guy's offering it to me, so I took it and said thank you very much. And eventually I was released from this cell because they realised that the person they were after, which was somebody who'd stolen a Mercedes-Benz motor car, couldn't possibly be this 18-year-old youth who couldn't drive. And they let me go. And so they let me go, and I suddenly had 40 Swiss francs, which was a decent amount of money, enough to buy breakfast and get me to Amsterdam, you know, well fed and ready for my trip home. So that was my trip, and gentle on my mind.
Yeah,
He was always with me.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is there anywhere that people can access any more of your poetry online? Do you have a website, or do you publish anything?
No, I don't. I've never. Helen, who runs Client Culture, she did publish a couple of my poems in the printed version of that magazine a while back, but I've never submitted things to magazines. For me, what I write has always been purely for my own.
A couple of bits of One Zoo Q, isn't there? There was a bit, I think, in the booklet that we made.
That's right,
never
yeah.
got out. Well, it did get out for one night only before lockdown.
Yeah. So you can find it like that if you're at all interested. But, I mentioned earlier that I don't really consider what I do to be art or poetry or anything like that. I can't. I'm far too lazy and lackadaisical a person to even consider myself an artist. You know, to be an artist, you need discipline, and I'm just a slob, basically. But I like writing, so I do it. And it's only over the past 3 years or so since I came across this spoken word scene in Plymouth that I've actually put any of my stuff out for other people to listen to. And because I've played in bands and things, I found the actual performance of things to be, you know, I'm in my comfort zone there. It's not a big deal for me to perform. I'm quite happy to do it, and you know, I get off on it. Let's face it, you know, I get a bit of a buzz out of it. So I've enjoyed it, and it's been good for me because it's meant that I've been a little bit more disciplined about my approach to writing. A little bit.